Hello, everyone. It's exactly 8 days to the presidential and National Assembly election. And despite the Supreme Court ruling, President Buhari has only extended the use of 200 Naira notes by 60 days, saying the other old notes are no longer legal tender. Thanks for joining us on the program. Let's find out what you think about the president's speech earlier today on Twitter. Tag me at Nifemi Ogutoye. Use the hashtag TVC Countdown 2023. President Muhammadu Buhari today announced that the old 200 Naira notes will remain a legal tender until April 10, 2023. During a nationwide broadcast, the president apologized to all for the difficulties experienced in accessing the new Naira notes. He said the old 500 and 1,000 Naira notes have ceased to be legal tender from 10 February, explaining that they can be returned to the Central Bank of Nigeria. Let's have more details in this report.
Of the loopholes associated with money
A national broadcast that was widely anticipated, but leaves so much more to be desired. The Central Bank of Nigeria's currency redesign policy has drastically weakened the purchasing power of citizens, an outcome that was least expected. President Muhammadu Buhari's directive that the old 200 Naira notes should be reintroduced as legal tender contradicts suggestions made by the Nigeria Governors Forum and the advice of the Council of States for the old currency to coexist with the new Naira notes until they are gradually phased out.
I have given approval to the CBN that the old 200 Naira banknotes be released back into circulation, and that it should also be allowed to circulate as legal tender with the new 200 Naira, 500 Naira, and 1,000 Naira banknotes for 60 days from February 10th, 2023 to April 10th, 2023, when the old 200 Naira notes ceases to be legal tender.
The president has not considerably shifted grounds. He insists this currency redesign will restore the statutory ability of the Apex Bank to keep a firm control over the money in circulation, as about 2.1 trillion naira out of the banknotes previously held outside the banking system had been successfully retrieved.
I have been reliably informed that since the commencement of this program, about 2.1 trillion naira out of the banknotes previously held outside the banking system had been successfully retrieved.
President Muhammadu Buhari seems excited that the new monetary policy will contribute to the minimization of the influence of money in politics, which he says is a bold legacy step by his administration to improving the electoral process. But for Nigerians, the biggest gain will be to have access to cash, as they will have to wait for the central bank to improve the circulation of the new Naira notes.
And reactions continue to trail Mr. President's approval of 200 Naira old note circulation for the next 60 days. The latest is coming from a civil society organization, Center for Social and Economic Rights, which has now condemned the violence that broke out in some parts of the country as a result of insensitive and provocative implementation of the Naira redesign policy. In a press statement by the Group Executive Director Nelson Ekujimi, it says the pains and anguish inflicted on innocent Nigerians may, by the inhuman implementation of this policy, has degenerated into pockets of violence. And on the president's speech, the group is saying recognizing only the old 200 Naira as legal tenders by law a contempt of court. The big question will be whose declaration should Nigerians comply with, the president's or the Supreme Court? Well, one thing is certain, that Nigerians are confused as to who to believe. The president is given a directive contrary to that of the Supreme Court. So we spoke to Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Professor Paul Ananaba, to explain separation of powers and who Nigerians should obey at this time.
By those sections 287 and all that of the Constitution, the president is mandated by the Constitution to carry out the decisions of the Supreme Court. In the past, Nigerians are part of this problem because in the past, the federal high court or the state high court will make pronouncements and we'll just sweep them by the side because we consider them lower courts. Today, it has grown to Court of Appeal and now at the Supreme Court. I don't imagine that the Supreme Court will make a pronouncement and any government official of whatever level goes and to say something contrary to that. The framers of the Constitution placed the legislature as Section 4 of the Constitution and placed the executive as Section 5, placed the judiciary as Section 6. It is deliberate. Now, the actions of the legislature and the executive will be tested and interpreted by the judiciary and by the reality school of jurisprudence. What the courts say and nothing but that is the law. It is what the courts say that is the law. The situation now that I said, that was why I said there was going to be a crisis because the citizen is left between choosing whether to obey the president's speech or to obey the Supreme Court. And having told you that what the courts say, and the Supreme Court is the court itself, because it is the last court. So I will advise every citizen of Nigeria to obey the Supreme Court because that's what the Constitution says, Section 27. And I believe that the president will address the situation. He will remedy it. I believe so because I don't think that he intended to get what you will be hearing from the citizens. He is the father of the nation, and you cannot ignore his children. You cannot ignore Nigerians. It cannot be that either a president or a governor or any other highly placed person in Nigeria officer will, by the person's speech or comment, void an existing pronouncement of the court.
So what is the law, what the court says, or what Mr. President is saying? Well, Professor Paul Nanaba is going with the court. The president's position is quite contrary to the position of the Supreme Court. But can Mr. President overrule the Supreme Court? We also spoke to Senior Advocate of Nigeria and Attorney General, as well as Commissioner of Justice in Lagos, Muyosore Unigbanjo. Let's listen to his position.
This directive or this speech by Mr. President is quite contrary to the injunctive order granted by the Supreme Court. And I believe Mr. President has enormous powers, no doubt, in the Constitution, but those powers does not include the power to sit on appeal in respect of the decision of the Supreme Court or any court for that matter. So as far as I'm concerned, as a lawyer and as the Attorney General of Lagos State, the interim order of the Supreme Court still stands. Basically because Mr. President, even in all his enormity, cannot overrule any order made by the Supreme Court.
Nigerians have two directives, one from the Supreme Court asking that the old notes remain legal tender pending the hearing of the substantive matter. Mr. President earlier today is saying only 200 Naira old note is considered legal tender, and every other old note should now be submitted at the Central Bank of Nigeria. We spoke to a cross-section of Nigerians to have an understanding of what they feel about this new development.
It's a welcome development, but we still need that 500 and 1,000 because the small money, we cannot carry it as bunch. But when we have 1,000, it will be easier for us.
People are suffering because of this money. People are suffering too much. We can't buy anything in the market. The small one we have, they told us to go and deposit in the bank. Okay, we reach bank, they give person money. It's only 5,000. 5,000 cannot buy anything.
200 Naira cannot solve our problem. Because that 1,500 is the major high currency that people need to buy what they want to buy. Because other people are having 1,000 naira in their hand, but they cannot use it. If you buy something with this 1,000, they have to give you change of 200. But when you give them this 1,000, they reject it. Is it not our currency? It's our currency, even though it's old one. But let them give us chance, time, so that when the new money circulates, then we can use everything.
The people that were doing the protests, the way they were doing scattering bank and other things, trying to go and break CBN, I was not happy over it. But at the end of the day, about 3-4 people died. But I was so sad about it.